How big should expectations be in Morgantown this year? Mountaineer Paul's here to discuss just that, host of Locked On Mountaineers. So West Virginia and the Rich Rodriguez reunion is now officially underway as we've moved into spring football. Paul, your expectations are high, low, Goldilocks style, just in the middle. Where do you think West Virginia fans' head should be?
Yeah, it's interesting, man. So looking at some of the numbers, right? West Virginia has brought in, as of right now, the exact amount of players that Jackson State brought in last year. Overall, close to 60 new players on this roster. They lost 3 games in a row, then they obviously won 9 in a row, won their conference championship. Probably not going to do that in the Big 12, Spencer. So I'm assuming that the expectations for this team, bowl eligibility at best, in my opinion, in year one, just based off the sheer numbers, the sheer amount of players we have returning. We have less than 2 starters on each side of the ball returning, just an incredible number, like basketball kind of numbers where you just have nobody back. We got a quarterback that started a couple games and Jaheim White on offense, and we've got a couple defensive linemen on defense. No secondary players are back, nothing. Probably our biggest acquisition is Zach Alley, from Oklahoma, the defensive coordinator, will play a huge role, and they've had that defense looking really good. But overall, just so much movement. I won't count Rich Rod out, but I would say bowl eligibility is a good place to start.
Yeah, I feel like that volume of player movement to West Virginia has kind of gone under the radar. If it's not Colorado, then it's not a big portal move. Or Ole Miss, brings in a lot of players, but not even the same volume. But 60 new players, is that something where you kind of expect it to be maybe a bit of a slower start to begin the season as they feel things out and just try to get their footing and figure out how the chemistry works, particularly on offense?
Well, one of the things that's going to help is obviously he brought in a slew of those Jacksonville State players, some of their best players too. Some of those guys boarding on 4-star transfer status, really good players. So Cam Vaughn at wide receiver, one of the best guys. Obviously Fred Perry at safety, one of the best guys they had on that team last year that won a conference championship in the CUSA. So they do have good players. I still think that it's going to be definitely, it's an overhaul, right? There's a lot going on. You've got a brand new defensive coordinator. And so even the incoming players from last year have nothing to work with. It's new to everybody. So unfortunately, it's definitely going to be a tough situation, but we feel good about the player acquisition in general and how many players have come in.
None of it really matters, though, when you're talking about having a successful season, especially in the Big 12. If your quarterback play isn't any good, Garrett Green out the door, no longer West Virginia's quarterback. So sounds like there's a battle brewing over there in Morgantown. Where do you expect that to go? Where do you want it to go, and who's involved?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Jalen Henderson out of Texas A&M, just a crazy story. Started his career at Fresno State, never played a game, and transferred up to Texas A&M. I don't know how many times you've ever heard that, but it happened there.
This is my first time hearing about it.
That's just talent, though. Somebody recognized his talent, and it proved to be legitimate. He played at Texas A&M, had a really good 5-game run before he got hurt. Rich Rod's betting on that upside. And when you look at him, a lot of similarities to Pat White in his game. So he's a lefty. He can really move, and he's perfect for what Rich Rod wants to do in that offense. But Nico Marchiol was still here too, who was a 4-star player 3 years ago coming out of high school, top 100 player. So he's the incumbent. He started several games. He's never lost a game in his career out of 4 starts. That's worth something. And he is the fan favorite. He's been loyal. And here's the thing. If he wins and is successful, he'll stick around. That's the big thing a lot of people are looking at with him is like, yeah, it would be great if Henderson plays well, but if he has a breakout year, we don't know what will happen. We know Nico's sticking around no matter what. He sat behind Garrett Green knowingly. He stayed here even after all the change with Neil Brown. There's a lot to really dissect with the situation, but I think right now it's an even battle. I'd give the slight edge to Nico because he's got at least he's been here portion of that covered. He doesn't have to adjust to a lot. But they're both learning a new offense, and both are mobile. They're both lefties. Like there's a lot of similarities there just purely
both
watching the
lefties.
tape.
Both. Yeah. Just want to make sure everybody's hearing that correctly.
Our top three are lefties.
I don't think that has to be the only program in college football that can say we have a 100% chance of starting a left-handed quarterback this year. I don't think I've ever seen that before either. West Virginia's just all about making history, aren't they?
Right. Rich Rod said he hasn't seen it either. It just happened to work out that way, but it is great for continuity on the offense. We do know a lot of cases, especially with quarterbacks, you memorize one side of the field a little bit more than the other based on your dominant hand. At least you don't, and it's harder on the other players, right? If you have to switch the field over to one side, a lot of times it can be harder to flip that for the other players, the other 10 guys. So in this case, that won't have to happen.
Yeah, your right tackle is your left tackle now in terms of importance, and that's the case no matter who wins the job. But you said it's pretty even right now. How do you think one guy separates himself from the other?
Summer. I think it's going to happen in the summer. It's going to be the guy that makes the most plays. Rich Rod has made no bones about it. One thing about that makes this offense unique is we play with 11 players. That includes the quarterback. So whoever does that best, whichever quarterback plays the best in this system, makes the most plays in camp, simply will start. There is no allegiances with Rich Rodriguez. He has no filter. He tells us this every week. And the simultaneously having to cut this roster down to 105 is really grating on him right now. And we've already been told we're going to expect another dozen or so more experienced, whatever that means, players in the portal coming in the spring when that thing opens up again.
Players that are going to come to West Virginia, you mean?
Oh yeah, there's at least a dozen, maybe 15 more coming in, and they're going to be making cuts. He's openly talked about it. And like I said on the show, it's funny how Dion got destroyed for this a couple years ago, and now it's pretty much common practice.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something every program does, certainly. I do think you see it more often. I mean, you look at what Kurt Cignetti did at Indiana last year, and he had more success with it in a tougher league than Dion did at Colorado, and I think that it certainly can work. It can also not work. Like, I don't view it necessarily in a hugely different way on a short-term basis. I think over the long run, you want to recruit, you want to build your program through your high school recruiting ranks. But I mean, for a 1-2 year stopgap solution, I think being so portal heavy can in fact work and be successful. But speaking of the portal, Paul, there are a lot of guys that have come in. Is there one transfer in particular you think has to shine for this West Virginia team outside of the quarterback situation for them to make a bowl game?
Yeah, it's Jamori Robinson. He's got a 94 overall grade in the portal, 6'5", 250. Would have been a mid-round NFL draft pick if he would have went into the draft. West Virginia just paid him not to do that. West Virginia also paid probably the second best transfer, Michael Coach Jr., not to go on his Ole Miss visit. I've been able to independently confirm that. So, they really swung for the fences. Rich Rod got a lot of support financially, obviously from billionaire Ken Kendrick, Pat McAfee giving millions. There's a lot going into the program financially, which you have to have, obviously, to succeed. Jamori Robinson is at the very top of that list, somebody that everybody wanted. If he would have went to Ohio State, you would have blinked an eye. He's that good of a player, defensive player of the year at UTSA in that conference last year. Those guys don't grow on trees in the portal.